The road to sainthood is a challenging road. It's not just Jesus saying, lie down on this Tempur-Pedic mattress, have a Chick-fil-A #1, I'll get you a Diet Coke, and you can rest there forever.
Welcome to the Homeschool Connections Podcast. I'm your host, Kaitlin Zara, and I'm so glad you're spending some time with me today. New episodes drop every week, so make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you're watching on YouTube. All right, mamas, grab your coffee, press play, and let's homeschool together. Today we have Emily Wilson Husom joining us. Emily is here to talk all things Sincerely Stoneheart, her newly released book that guides women through spiritual and emotional challenges. Ladies, take it from me. If you read just one book in 2025, let it be this one. Emily, I am so thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. We're on opposite ends of the country. Wherever you're
Yes.
listening, I'm so delighted to be with you in the car or at home today. Thanks so much for letting me be on the show.
Oh, this is so wonderful. What a joy. Emily, I'm diving right in. You open your book, Sincerely Stoneheart, sharing that in 2021, you experienced what you called a personal post-pandemic awakening. And that experience was a catalyst for you writing this amazing book. Can you take me back to that time in 2021 and tell me a little bit about your life and what inspired writing Sincerely Stoneheart?
Yeah, absolutely. What a thoughtful question. So, as we all did experience in 2020, there was just so much fear and loneliness and sorrow and discouragement. I was a part of that. I had a baby in September of 2020. I can't believe all the post-pandemic or the 2020 babies are turning 5 years old. But I really started to think about fear and discouragement and the role the enemy plays in like sowing fear in our lives. So, as many of us did, I had a lot of time to reflect. And I've been working in ministry with women for 14 years now on women's retreats and conferences, at events. And one of my favorite things to do, I'm a speaker, and my least favorite part about speaking is the speaking part. My favorite part is the listening part. I love listening to women. And for 14 years, I had listened to women share their hearts and their stories and their struggles about fear and discouragement and self-hatred and all of these things in their lives. And I really got to thinking, man, the enemy was so hard at work in the Garden of Eden and is so hard at work still in the hearts of women today. And so when I had this post-pandemic awakening, realizing the role that fear had played in my life and realizing, how discouraged, I was as a woman, I started to think, oh my goodness, this is a theme. These are threads that the enemy has sewn into lives of women. So I started writing them in the spirit of the Screw Tape Letters. For those of you out there listening, you might have read the Screw Tape Letters. You might not have read it. But it's really just the spirit of looking at how has the devil worked in my heart and in my life, and in seeing the clarity, right, in my own life during that time of how the devil has worked in my heart and in my life. I said, I don't want to live like this anymore. So let's get to the truth and let's live in the freedom of that truth. That's kind of how it all came to be.
I love that, Emily. And just like you mentioned you had a baby in September 2020. I had a baby, my son, in March 2020, right before things exploded. And so our experiences, I'm sure, were similar in a lot of ways and maybe isolated and, like you
Mhm.
said, full of fear. But I live my life always thinking that God is always working for our greatest good, and how I have used that time to also, like you, kind of have an awakening and see things in a new light and choose to live my life in that spirit that God is working for my greatest good, and that my son was born right when he was supposed to be. And that journey for me was exactly what it was meant to be. So I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah, we all learned so much.
We really did. We sure did. A lot of my
Mhm.
interviews actually this season, a lot of people made such beautiful things out of that time. So your Sincerely Stoneheart is certainly one of them, and I love it. I just love it. So in the chapter, The Next Time is Never Different, you write something that will resonate with, I think, every mom. I'm going to say
Mhm.
blanket statement, every mom. You say, every load of laundry, sour. Every prepared dinner, sour. Every long and laborious bedtime, sour. And you said that the enemy also wants us then, after all of that hard work, to lie in bed at night awake and say, oh, my children are going to be adults before I know it. They're going to be grown. And all they're going to remember was that I was sour. And for me, I know you're probably the same as me, Emily, but I clean my house, I cook my meals, I mow the lawn once a week. Sometimes I even cut my boy's hair. And for me, it's a mind shift of saying, I get to do this. And this is a blessing that I get to
Mhm.
serve my family. But is it really that easy? Is it just a mind shift for us to realize it's a blessing that can take it from being sour, waking up and doing the same chores every day?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a perspective every single day, not the perspective that, many older mothers tell you in the grocery store, don't blink or you'll miss it. Like, that's a great perspective to have. But the perspective of like, what am I actually doing the laundry for? I'm doing it for the glory of God. Why am I actually cooking these meals? It's for the glory of God in service of my family. Why am I mowing the lawn? You're mowing the lawn for the glory of God, And if I forget that, it's really easy to be sour. It's really easy to be like, oh my gosh, everybody just wants something from me all the time. Everybody, blah, blah, blah. And it's just so, especially in our culture, and you can speak to this too, in just like a complaining motherhood culture, that
Hmm.
so many moms online, you can find them complaining about this or that, and it's so hard and blah, blah, blah. And it's challenging, sure, but the road to sainthood is a challenging road. It's not just Jesus saying, lie down on this Tempur-Pedic mattress, have a Chick-fil-A number one, I'll get you a Diet Coke,
Oh.
and you can rest there forever. He said, if you want to follow me, take up your cross and follow me. And the daily duties that we do give glory to Jesus, and that mindset shift of, like you said, I get to do this. What a gift. Recently online, I talked about how in the book, like that line specifically that you spoke of, how the devil wants mothers to be sour. There's a difference between being sour and being weary. Jesus talks about weariness, right? He says, come to me, you who are weary, and I will give you rest. And I think in our weariness, we can let our weariness turn us sour, or we can let it turn us to Jesus, right? To say, Jesus, I'm weary. Like, it's a lot of laundry. It's a lot of food. Like, I can't believe that, I have to get dinner on the table for the next many, 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 many
Yes.
years. And in that weariness, I say, all right, Lord, I'm turning to you instead of turning sour.
I love that. Amen. Absolutely. And the years, like you said, we don't like to hear it maybe from the older women at the grocery store, but it's true. And we reflect and realize maybe even how quickly our children's lives have gone so far. It's like we know how quickly it's going to go and what a blessing it is to have them under our roof to serve for this season of life.
Yes. What an unbelievable gift. Do you feel in your own life that you've seen a culture of complainy kind of motherhood, or do you see the
Absolutely.
opposite?
I call it like the mama needs a glass of wine culture.
Mm.
It's the, this day was so crazy. Mama's gotta, and sometimes you'll see these images on social media of like a mom, jokingly a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And it gives this impression that motherhood is such a burden. And you speak to that, of course, multiple times in the book.
Yeah.
But and how the devil wants us to believe it's a burden that you're spending your whole life sitting on the floor with toys with your young children and driving them around. And I do see that. I see that really it's very popular for women in our age group to have this social media influence that motherhood is a burden. You're exhausted. Don't you need a glass of wine to wine to
Mhm.
unwind? Like,
Mhm.
actually, I don't. I really need to cuddle my babies at night and maybe ask my husband to load the dishwasher for me, but I don't need the glass of wine. I'm fulfilled. I'm loving this season.
Absolutely. Yes and amen. That's the spirit that we need more of in this world today, I really believe.
Make every homeschool day a little more fun with Saint Sprouts. These cute hand-drawn Catholic stickers and magnets are perfect for lesson plans, feast days, and inspiring your kids with the saints. Durable, waterproof, and made for joyful learning. Visit saintsprouts.com and use code CONNECTIONS for 10% off your first order. We're talking now a little bit about social media and some of the influences that women in our age group see. So I really want to talk about the internet and phones. You speak of it
Mhm.
multiple times in the
Yeah.
book. And I shared with you privately that some of what you wrote it knocked me on my butt. Like it really, you said it in a way that just strikes your heart in a way that makes you vulnerable and reflective and humble and made me realize exactly what, the point that you were getting to, that our children see us on our phones a lot.
Mhm.
So I really want to ask you personally, what do you do in your own life? Because we're slaves to our phones. Sometimes I know for me, it's to order groceries, it's to set up a park play date. Sometimes it's innocently just on our phones for the things we need to do. But I want to break free. So, how are you more
Mm.
present with your own beautiful children?
Yeah, it's a great question. I learned so much. So the letter you're referencing is letter 10 for all you mamas listening out there. It's called Hold On. And in that letter, I talk about how so much of our lives, and the research, some study just came out that the average screen time for people is 5 hours a day, which is just crazy.
Crazy.
Yes, and you use the word humbled, and it is humbling when we actually look at it, not to say like, "Oh, I know I have a problem, but like, it's fine."
Mhm.
But like actually to be convicted and writing when the Lord sat with me as I write that letter, I felt so convicted about like, okay, how can I not have technology control me, but how can I control technology, right? I am not powerless to this. I can choose this.
Mhm.
So I do have a couple of rules in my life that help me with this. I have a rule where I do not have my phone in my children's bedrooms ever. So
Beautiful.
the nursery, no phone zone. My son's room, no phone zone, like ever at all. Another thing that I started doing after I wrote this letter is that if I'm with my husband and my children and I don't need a way for people to contact me, and this doesn't work for everybody, some people have ill or aging parents or things that they need updates
Mhm.
on, I will leave my phone at home. And my husband knows now, like when we go to mass on Sunday, typically my phone is at home. So just that it's just not there anymore. And if someone, needs everybody, knows I'm married to Daniel. And so if they know if they need to get a hold of me really urgently, they can call Daniel. So it's just at home because I think, what do I need it for? And now when I'm like ordering groceries on my phone, my sons are 6 and 4, and I'll tell them what I'm doing. I won't just
Mhm.
mindlessly scroll there and sit there and like have them just see me on my phone. I'll say, I'm ordering the groceries. Do you want to help me pick some out? And they can come and they can help me like pick out, the groceries that I'm doing. Those are 3 like practical things that I've done. And some people say, I wish you had put like practical things in the book. And I say, that's for you to take up with the Lord.
Mm.
So much of what's in the book is like, okay, I'm convicted, but I don't tell you really. I do. I give suggestions right along the way in the way that Screw Tape Letters does about how we can break free from these things. But if you feel convicted, like, oh my gosh, I do feel powerless to technology, take it to the Lord after reading Sincerely Stoneheart and say, okay, Lord, what changes do you want me personally to make? Like, how do you want me to shift this in my life? Because it's one thing to be convicted and it's another thing to make changes after I've been convicted about something. And that's the big deal. That's where the Lord can like change our hearts and our lives. After reading, did you make any like concrete changes in your life?
I did. And I love what you said because I don't think you needed to put it in the book because I think when we get a self help book with a list of things to do, it's not personal. And
Mhm.
so usually we try those habits and they fall to the wayside because they're not going to have lasting change unless we, like you said, have that prayerful time of deciding what's going to work for us. And it's funny because when you ask what I've done almost the reverse of what you've done. When you leave the house, you leave your phone at home. For me, when I get home, I started leaving my phone in the car and locking the
Love
phone in the
that.
car. And my husband, it's so funny. Just this week, of course, it's like 100 degrees here in New York this week. But my husband gets in the car and he's like, "You left your phone in the car. It's not going to turn on because it overheated."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, I did that intentionally, Joe. I left my phone intentionally in the car and locked it outside of the house so that when I'm home, I'm unreachable." So I did implement that and it works for me. It's been working.
I love that. I love
It's
that. When
cool,
the boys were
right?
really small, did you ever use AIM when you were younger and you had an
Of
away
course I did.
message?
Of course.
Yeah, so when the boys were younger, and I've been thinking about implementing it again, I had an away message when people would text me. A message goes back. I don't know what I'm like really not technologically savvy. A message goes back to people and says, I am away from my phone raising my boys. so that they know I'm not going to get back to them really
I
soon
love
because I rarely
that.
have time to get back to them. And they just know, like, she's not just available every second of every day. And, it'll take her a while to get back to me because it does. And it's okay that I'm always away from my phone raising my boys. So that is another thing that I thought, was helpful. But I love that you leave your phone in the car. You're just like, I don't need this.
I'm trying. I
Yeah.
really I live my life in a way that I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing well. I don't have any addictions. I feel so free of any addiction." And then I realize my phone's kind of glued to me as if it's, another part of my body, and I wanna break free of that. And
Mhm.
certainly your book was a catalyst to saying, "It is time to make a change."
I love
So, thank you
that.
for that, Emily. Thank you for
You're
that.
so welcome. I'm so glad you were willing to make changes. Small changes
Yeah.
make a huge difference.
I think the Holy Spirit, when you're ready, is ready to work through you. And when you say yes, the change happens quickly. Don't you think so?
Yes,
It goes. So
for
I
sure.
really want to talk to you about something else that us women struggle with. I follow you on Instagram, and you mentioned just this week that you were, I think it was at the grocery store with your son, and you made a comment about how he was going to be starting like a pre-K program in the fall.
Mhm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And that the woman that you spoke to was kinda, like, shocked and surprised that this would be your son's first, like, school experience,
Mhm.
and it reminded me so much of in your book, you say, "We're ready to empower each other and stand up for each other and champion each other until we can divide ourselves based on our parenting choices."
Mhm.
And of course, you say that the enemy is always working to divide, divide, divide. And you mentioned things like, well, there's co sleeping versus sleep training, or vaccines versus no vaccines. And of course, we're speaking to the homeschooling mamas today.
Yeah,
We're, homeschool versus public or traditional schooling. So the enemy is using division against us. And I really want to know, I want to get to the heart of if we're aware of this, how can we as women work to unify ourselves despite our differences?
absolutely. That's a great question. And I feel that too. So for all you mamas out there, I am a homeschooling mom too. My sons go to a co-op. Well, my son will
Yep.
start at a
Mine
co-op
too. Yep.
twice a week. So that's what we were talking about with the lady checking us out at the grocery store, that he's going to start going to his co-op. The division is unbelievable. And I know all of you listening out there, like, when you hear about division among mothers, maybe you can think of the culture as a whole, but maybe you can even think about fights that you've seen women in your
Mhm.
ministries get into over, co-sleeping versus crib sleeping versus,
Yeah.
crying out, whatever it was. And you can
Right?
remember, oh my gosh. And you feel like in that moment or in those experiences, like, wow, this division is so crazy. But writing this,
Mhm.
I was like, oh my gosh, it's just the devil at work. The devil wants to pit moms against each other, to think, how could you raise your children like that?
Yeah.
But Kaitlin, you know where I found it that it starts? It's kind of goes back to the quote, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me.
Mhm.
I had to look
Mm.
at my own heart in my own life about the way, like, that my heart kind of feels when moms talk about choices that they're making that I disagree with. Okay. Does my heart go to judgment of them? Like, just in the own quiet spaces of me and the Lord, do I jump to judgment to say, oh my gosh, in my mind, like, I can't believe she would raise her children that way? Or does my heart go to, we all get to raise our children the way we see best and the way we see fit? If in my own disposition of my heart, I'm jumping to judgment, that's not helping anyone, and it's not helping
Mhm.
unify mothers at all. So looking at my own disposition and my own heart, and then just the way that we speak, about other mothers and to other mothers, and like mothering as a whole, that respect, right? And that's what I was talking about in that Instagram story, respecting other people's discernment, right? And as a homeschool mom, I know that can be so hard, and I'm sure you've talked about it at length on the podcast, of people's judgment of the choice to homeschool, and families just saying, what are you doing? And even
Absolutely.
like the choice to homeschool causing division among families, to say, how dare you do that? And like, not that, a lack of respect there for people saying, we've discerned this, and we are choosing this for the good of our children. One of the things that I had to get comfortable with is just people not understanding the choices my husband and I make for our children,
Mhm.
because they're very countercultural and a lot of
Yes,
them
me
don't make
too.
sense to people.
Yep.
And you have to get to a place where it's like, we discern this with the Lord, so I don't care what you think, because the one person I care about what they think is God himself. And this is where he is leading us. And I have to have confidence there. So, long story short, to that answer of your question, looking at my own heart to say, do I judge mothers who do things differently than me? Do I speak ill of other
Mhm.
groups of mothers who do different things differently than me? And if I do, how can I change that? How can I, let
Yeah.
the Lord guide every mom as he sees fit, and let him guide me as he sees fit?
Absolutely. And I also think if you can see, Emily, that a mom loves her children and is doing her best, then she is just operating on parenting her children from a good place in her heart. Even if it's not
Yes.
what we agree with, you can see that whatever her knowledge of parenting is and motherhood, she's using that to the best of her ability to love on her kids. And it might not be what we would do, but you can see that she's coming from a good place and doing the best that she can at that time. And again, that's her choice. And I would say, certainly, I may have judged homeschooling before I decided to be a homeschooler. And certainly, when it was my turn to make that decision, I was so anxious, Emily. I describe it as if in a horror movie when you'd see like a character wake up in night sweats that they're having a nightmare like somebody's I felt that level of anxiety trying to make a decision for homeschooling for my children and if I was going to move, what was I going to do, a big transition time when your child becomes that age of school age.
Mhm.
And I my only choice was turning it over to prayer because I went through all of the other options. I read things online. My only option was prayer. And again, I got such a clear answer that this was what was meant for my family. That again, in New York, it's not as popular, it's not as accepted, but it was me and my beautiful little family against the world because I had my answer in prayer and I knew exactly what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I love that. And you can walk in freedom in that. When we
Yeah.
really trust the process of discernment, the Lord's answers in our discernment, we have to walk in freedom and like have this like shield of trust in the Lord. When people like make those comments, like, what are you doing? Oh my goodness, the older ladies in our neighborhood all the time during the school year, they're like, why aren't ask the boys right to their faces? Why aren't you in school? I'm sure many of you
Mhm.
moms out there can relate.
Yes,
Why aren't you
yes.
in school? Right. And you just let it bounce off your shield of trust in the Lord, your shield of
Mm,
discernment, your shield of
amen.
surrender to God's plan for your specific family.
I love that. That's probably, I mean, everything you're sharing is so important, but that is an important reminder for you mamas who are listening because we experience that all the time. So,
Yes.
Emily, I want to talk to you. Of course, we're moms. I'm a C-section mama. I know you are too. You've mentioned that before. And
Mhm.
indifferent now, you write, maybe it's her weight or her wrinkles, unhealthy habits she's developed over the years, the way her body has changed drastically since bearing children. And I've got to talk about this because I don't know. Again, I don't know a mom who doesn't feel this way. We have talked about this in whispers in my girl groups, of homeschooling moms. We all have felt this way. And sure, I've adapted the unhealthy habits. I pick off my kids' plates when there's a leftover cookie. And sure, I look real different than I used to. My husband and I actually, just this week was the 14-year anniversary of when my husband proposed, when we got engaged. And so
Congratulations.
thank you. And I think to myself, we're looking at a picture of ourselves 14 years ago on that beautiful day. Certainly, I look very different. And I think we need to talk about this, especially for the heart of the mom, of the homeschooling mom, because I think how we feel about ourselves is reflected in every aspect of our lives. What we bring to our
Mm.
marriage, what we bring to our homes, our dinner tables, what we bring to the homeschool table, really, it reflects on the energy that we feel and what we feel about ourselves. So I want you to tell us a little bit about that chapter. What inspired that and what encouragement can you give to us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think every mom feels that, some more deeply than others, of just, and I write in the letter of the book, I'll give you a spoiler for all you moms listening out there. The lie that the enemy has sown into my life and has spoken to me so many times is, you're so much harder now to love. than you were back then. Like I see pictures, right? Like you said, 14 years ago of my husband
Mhm.
and I when we were early dating, and I look so carefree. And I look so fun. And I look, naturally, when you're a single woman with a boyfriend, you have a lot less cares than you do when you have 3 children. And some seasons of life, you're getting up every hour in the night and your
Yeah.
wrinkles are deepening and your C-section scar is never going to go away.
Mhm.
And really looking at my marriage, I actually cried a lot writing this letter because I didn't realize how deeply, like, I believed this lie. You're so much harder to love now because of just the responsibilities that you carry and the lack
Mhm.
of, carefreeness. There were in my mom's ministry, there was a night where we talked about this. So you can do these, the book as a group. And the moms, what they were sharing was so beautiful, like that their husbands would say, I love you so much more than I did back then. You've given me these children and you serve me in such beautiful ways. And how so many moms just say, like, he says it, but I just don't believe him because I look in the mirror and I see that I'm 30 pounds heavier than I was when we got married. And, I look so different and I'm frazzled a lot of the time. And like, I have food in my hair and peanut butter on my clothes. Like, how could you love me more? And
Mhm.
mom saying, like, I read this letter and I feel like maybe I should believe him when he says it. And maybe all of this craziness, right? The hurricane of all these years, as I talk about it, has made me more beautiful. And maybe it's not that I'm harder to love now, but that I'm different to love now. And when I made that change, that shift, like you talked about perspective shifts, when I made the shift to say, I'm so sick of listening to the lie that the enemy speaks into my life that I'm so much harder to love. The truth is that I'm just different to love now. That I am, I do look different physically. My soul and my spirit is different than it was when I was, dating my husband 12 years ago. And that's okay. It's okay to grow and it's okay to gain weight and it's okay to
Yeah.
carry our scars and whatever it is and peanut butter in our hair. We're just different to love, and walking in the freedom of that. Oh my gosh, it has transformed me. So I'm glad that you brought that letter up because it's been one of the most impactful ones for me in my own marriage to really believe my husband when he like says that.
Yeah. I started to cry, and I feel like I'm gonna cry now, even just, like, talking with
Go
you
right
about this,
ahead. Mm-hmm.
because it really I feel it so deeply, and I am so blessed. I'm in a marriage where my husband says it every day that he, like, just adores me and thinks I'm the greatest thing, and it's not that I don't believe him, but maybe my own self-image of myself is that he doesn't see me as harder to love or different to love even. I see myself that way. I used to
Mm.
be available to him all the time, 24/7, and now I'm like, "No, the kitchen has gotta get clean before the kids go to bed," or, "No, no, no, we have to be at this, co-op," at wherever it may be,
Mhm.
and so things have shifted in that way, but he just adores me, and I just adore him too. But life around we haven't changed so much as life around us has changed. The amount of
Mm.
response I mean, I met my husband when I was 20. So now to be 36 and our lives look very different. We've got a house and children, and I've got this wonderful podcast to host. We've got a lot. We're homeschooling. We've got a lot more going on that takes our time, but I think really what drives us in our marriage is knowing that we are this team together. We are so thrilled to be raising these boys that have been, I say, gifted to us. They have been
Totally.
gifted to us. And to have this roof over our heads, to have this wonderful experience for me being, here to speak on this podcast and share family and faith. And so I think it's just such a really a great reminder for me, even personally, what you just shared about how we feel about ourselves, how maybe we are a little bit different to love, or things are different in our life circumstance, but it's still all good.
Yes. Yes, love is always good.
Always good. Always good. Emily, I got to ask you before we wrap things up today, if you're speaking right now to the Catholic homeschooling mom's heart, and she is trying to nurture her child's faith, and she is trying to do all the things, but she
Mm.
might be feeling overwhelmed. or discouraged, as you write about in this wonderful book, what do you say to that mom? What final thoughts can you share with that mom who's listening saying, "Okay, this is an answered prayer. This is what I needed this." What would you like to share with her?
That it's one thing, what I would share with her is that it's one thing to say, Jesus, I trust in you. And it's another thing to live it. And Jesus really wants us to live that. Like we talked about that discernment piece. You're trying to make the best decisions for your children day in and day out from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. We say, Jesus, I trust in you. When we live that out, we really live with open hands, right? We live with
Yeah.
this surrendered spirit in saying, Lord,
Mhm.
guide me. And when you make decisions, trust in the Lord's guidance. When you make really, really tough choices that go against the culture, not only do you say, Jesus, I trust in you, but you trust that for your child, he is just leading your heart and guiding your heart. And like in relation to all of this spiritual warfare that goes on, you will lay in your bed at night and the enemy will try to sneak in and say, you're messing it all up. What are you doing? All these moms do it better. All of those thoughts
Mhm.
will sneak in. And when you use those words and that like life of abundance that Jesus promised you in saying, Jesus, I trust in you. When the lies just start to
Mhm.
come, just say, Jesus, I trust in you. I trust in your heart for me. I trust in your heart for my children, and I will walk in freedom there. It really changes and transforms everything. Everything. What would you say? I got to throw it back to you, Kaitlin. What would you say to the mom? And I know you share so much here on your podcast. What would you say to the mom, maybe in this moment, who feels weary or sour or like, am I making the right choices for my children? What would encouragement would you give her today?
I would bring it right back to the beginning of our conversation. And it's that perspective shift of I get to, and this is a blessing, and these children are
Mm.
gifts to me. And resting your heart on that message because it is truth. It is truth. And to say that God is always, again, working for our greatest good. You might be in that pile of laundry. We all are. I'm telling you right now, from about here up, I'm looking like I'm ready for the podcast. I still have grass on my feet because I mowed the lawn barefoot today. And so, sure, I'm running around. I'm doing all the things. I am so blessed that I have a body that can move and a healthy body that can do this. Continue to tell yourself that perspective shift until it clicks. It will.
Mm.
Keep feeding yourself that positive message because that is absolutely what the Lord wants from us. He wants our happiness and us to delight in all of that wonderful stuff that we have to do today. So keep resting your heart on that message.
Mhm. Love that. Yep. Every time I do those tasks, it's really helpful to get into mode of saying, for your glory, Jesus, when you're doing
Yeah.
the dishes, for just such a simple thing, for your glory, Jesus, for your glory,
Yep.
Jesus, it changes everything in the
It
best
does.
way.
It does. Even Emily, I was getting ready for the podcast. And again, I've got my shirt on, but I've got like some nice pajama shorts on, and I'm running through the house and I have food ready for my boys so that they could eat lunch before I jumped on here. And my son's like, "Can you blow on my food?" And I'm thinking to myself, well, I can't. Like, I've got to go. Like, I actually can't. But I stopped and I did it for just a few
Mm.
seconds
Yeah.
because it was gonna mean something to him. And so I run back upstairs and I'm like, "All right, I better touch up my hair." And he follows me and he sees me with the hair dryer and he's like, "I've never done a hair dryer on my hair. Can you do it on?" And again, Emily, I'm thinking like, "I'm gonna be late for this podcast. Mama's gotta do her work." And I did. It became like a little mohawk, a little faux hawk for his little, bit of hair. And it meant something to him. He's like, "Mom, I look so cool now." And so I didn't have the time for either of those things. But those few seconds, it meant something to him. And so I want to bring it all back to that, to again, just delighting in those little moments. I think
Yeah.
that's so much of your message throughout the book is delighting in all that we get to experience instead of seeing it through the enemy's eyes, see it through the Lord's vision, his
Mhm.
perspective for us to delight in all of this wonderful, wonderful stuff.
Yes. I love that.
Emily, thank you so much. We're going to have the show notes with links to your book and to all of your social media so that you guys can reach out to Emily and get her book. Read this book, ladies. It will change you.
Thanks so much for having me. What a gift to all you mamas out there. Yes, you keep those hearts up and you fight on for your beautiful, beautiful children. We're all walking toward heaven together. What a gift that is.
Thank you, Emily. This isn't the end of the conversation. I want to hear from you. Come say hi on Instagram, connect with me on Facebook, or leave a comment below. I want to know what today's conversation sparked in you. I read and respond to every message. Until next time, remember, you got this.